Psalm 139. This is going to be parts of verses 1 through 17. Wherever there's three dots, it means I skipped some stuff, so I didn't fill up too much time reading the whole thing. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know my sitting down and my rising up. You understand my thought afar off. You comprehend my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word on my tongue, but behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I can't attain it. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance, being yet unformed, and in your book they all were written, all the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. How precious are your thoughts to me, O God! How great is the sum of them! And last week we read the same passage of scripture, talked about this same general subject, and that is, I am fearfully, wonderfully made. And last week we said these things, concentrated on those two words, fearfully and wonderfully. The way God created us is awe-inspiring, so complex. It just brings awe to you when you think about it. Wonderfully made means uniquely, intentionally, beautifully crafted. You are not an accident. God made you, put you here, and he planned it and he crafted you. And last week I said, nowhere is this more visible than in the smallest unit of the body. And then we talked about the cell, the human cell, the whole time. Well, it really isn't the smallest part of the human body. There are smaller things, and we're going to talk about one of the smaller things in a moment. But I wanted to concentrate on these verses that I just read, because there's three words or phrases that I want to talk about. First, the first one is skillfully wrought. The second one is my substance. And the third one is your book. I'm just going to say the same things here. Skillfully wrought, that word literally means intricately woven. It doesn't mean, it's not talking about making something, it's about weaving something together. The phrase curiously wrought or skillfully wrought, the original Hebrew text refers to the work of a master embroiderer. Those guys that made the curtains for the tabernacle, sewed them all with all these beautiful blues and reds and purples and golds and everything. They skillfully wrought them together. That's the word that is used for those guys. That's how God makes us. It's skillfully weaving us together. The my substance part of it is literally the word embryo or fetus. And he says, you saw my embryo before I ever was, before I ever came into the world, in other words. That is so interesting. God, life doesn't start when you come out of the womb and start breathing. God knows who you are and weaves you skillfully together, even in the womb. The in your book part of it means God's volume of knowledge. This morning in the Proverbs, or the Proverbs class, we talked about the book of our heart. Well, this is the same thing in God's book, the book of his heart, that has all his instructions, all his thoughts and cares and everything in your book. My life was written before ever I spent a day on this earth. That's what David was saying there. We are not a product of blind evolutionary forces. You are a custom tapestry woven by the hand of the living God. You are precious in his sight. The plan that he made, the incredible blueprint that he unfolded, starts out with DNA. DNA, I'm sure you all know, is deoxyribonucleic acid. If you don't, there won't be a test on it later. But so we're all made of that. Did you know you're made of acid? There people in the 60s used to drop acid, but that's not what we're talking about here. DNA is what we're going to talk about today. And before we get into that, though, suppose you're walking out in the desert someplace. Lee knows about sand dunes from dune buggying and motorcycling stuff, and I used to do it all the time. It's pretty barren out there. There's nothing. Suppose you're walking out in the desert and you see a book lying there open, just like this picture. Do you immediately assume that the wind just magically blew pages all together and made a book? Do you magically, or do you just automatically assume that some ink spilled out of somewhere and came down on all the pages and spelled out all the words that are in that book? You'd be an idiot. I mean, everybody would think you're out of your mind if you even started to say that, let alone said it. We all know that that didn't just happen by accident. If you find that book out there, you know that somebody created that book. Somebody made the bindings and put the pages in there, and somebody else, or maybe the same person, typed out all the words that are on those pages. It was planned. He didn't just start typing random characters. He thought about it and said, well, here's what I want to say, and I'm going to put it down, and you put it in a book. Thought about it. He planned it, got the paper he needed, got it bound in a book. That's all planned. It's all by design that this book comes into being. Nobody would argue that. Scientists would say, yeah, there's intelligence there. It has to be. It didn't all happen by accident. Well, the truth is, within every human body, there is a living library more complex than any book that was ever written on this earth. In every single cell of your body, there's a library. We're going to talk about that as we go. Any rational person would assume that it was intelligently designed, constructed, and authored. Well, I'm here to tell you that every one of us, has a book that's more complex than a whole library of books. And that book that's within each of us is what we call DNA. DNA is the blueprint for life. It's the language of the Creator. This is how God, it's literally written out in our DNA. Everything about us, everything that you ever were, everything you have been, and your potential for the future, it's all written there right now in every cell of your body. And God used just 4 molecular characters. We call them A, T, C, and G because we don't know what really they're supposed to be called. But our entire DNA is made up of 4 characters. Just like there's a Bible here someplace, or maybe we'll call this a Bible, it's a songbook. Everything in here is made up of 26 characters, put in all different combinations, separated by spaces and put in different orders. And it tells us a lot of stuff. The Bible's the same way. And so DNA is made up of 4 characters. They're put together in all different kind of ways, spaced differently, placed differently, but they spell out things. They include the instructions for our lives. The human genome contains over 3 billion pairs of these letters. In the DNA, we're going to talk about it, but these letters are always paired together, A with a T or C with a G. They're always paired together, and there's more than 3 billion pairs of these letters in one string of gene in every single cell of your body. And each of those pairs tell something about us. some kind of instruction about how to make a protein, how to make every single part of your body, how to make the neurons in your brain, all of that. 3 billion pairs of instructions arranged in differing order, different positions. And this is a huge instruction manual that you have in every cell of your body. You have a copy of a book with your name on it. I put my wife's name in there because she's special to me. She has a book of DNA that makes her unique. You have it too. Each one of us has a book full of knowledge, 3 billion characters of knowledge in each cell of your body that tell who you are. And it's your own set of instructions. It means there's no one else like you. There never has been anybody like you, and there never will be anybody like you. There's only one person ever in the entire life of humanity, now and to come, that's like you. You are totally unique. You're just like a snowflake. This happens to be a golden snowflake. You are precious to God, and you are different from every other snowflake he's ever made. I'm not calling you all snowflakes, but if the shoe fits, wear it. But the reason it's in there is because we're all unique. We're all different, just like every snowflake. There's no two alike. You are special to God. God made you the way you are. That should tell you something about maybe there's purpose to my life. Maybe I should be doing, maybe I need to seek out what God wants from, why did he make me just like I am? Anyway, this DNA looks kind of like this. It starts out, I think I have a pointer here. It starts out in the human cell. This is a cell. Inside the cell, there's a nucleus, and inside the nucleus, there's a bunch of these, which are called chromosomes, and what they are, each side of this, each two pieces is one string of DNA. You have, I'm getting ahead of myself, but you have 23 pairs of these, and altogether they add up to 6 feet of DNA. We're going to talk about that more. I don't want to get ahead of myself too much, but DNA itself is a double helix. And as you can see, it looks like a ladder that twists and spins around. And that's like a little railroad track. And going along that railroad track, different bits of information. They're called base pairs, as you can see over there. A with T, T with A, C with G, G with C. They always pair up like that. But there's something that goes along and reads this set of instructions and does everything about our whole life. The backbone of it is made out of sugar phosphate, and it's just the right consistency to be stiff enough to hold it together, but yet malleable enough to be able to twist and fold. Here's another picture. I'm going to zoom in on a section here, this double helix, the sugar phosphate framework, I guess you would say, but it shows the 4 different kinds of the 4 different letters that are used, and we call them just like we would call, you could spell it W or any of those. G is guanine, then there's cytosine, thymine, and adenine. They're the things that make up every single part of your body. They give all the instructions of how every single thing is made within you. I'm going to zoom in on the other part of this right now, just to looking at, these are all base pairs. I'm going to put it up there. They're all base pairs. There's 2 of these, and they're joined together by what they call a weak hydrogen bond, so that they can be separating apart. I was talking about this to Sue yesterday, and I said hydrogen bomb. No, that it's a hydrogen bond that holds them together. But anyway, there's sugar, phosphate, and then each of the things. I don't want, I'm not trying to get too technical about it, but I just want you to know that this is a complex system, a complex thing that makes up our DNA. All these pairs, there's 3 billion base pairs in one strand of DNA. In just one cell of your body, there's 3 billion of those base pairs. Each pair tells something, some instructions about who we are and how we are constructed and telling our body how to work. Well, the human genome, which the genome is just a genetic structure that we have, that contains a whole library full of information and instructions. And that is in a single DNA molecule. Every cell of your body has a DNA molecule, and every one of them has 3 billion pairs of instructions in it. Just to give us an idea of how much information is there, I calculated it out, and it is the information that would take 765 King James Version Bibles. Now, I don't know how long it takes you to read one King James Bible, but can you imagine trying to read 765? This library that you see here only has 744. I couldn't fit the other 21 on there. So there's 21 more volumes than this, all King James Bibles. That's how much information is in every single cell of your body. Every single cell of your body. So DNA, double helix, our DNA is 6 feet long, crammed into one cell of your body. Remember, there's 37 trillion cells in your body. We talked about that last week. And each one has 6 feet of DNA in it. But get this, we talked about last week, your cells, 10 of them can fit side by side in the width of a human hair. Guess how many strings of DNA fit side by side in the human hair? Take a guess. I bet it wasn't 40,000. 40,000 strings of DNA will fit in the width of a human hair. That is absolutely incredible. And then they're 6 feet long. A filament so tiny you can't even see it if you held it up there. Being 6 feet long. So I'm going to give you an illustration that might make it a little bit easier to understand. Suppose DNA, you know how it looks like a railroad track, the DNA. Suppose it were the actual width of a real railroad track, and each cross tie of the railroad track was one of those base pairs. If that was the case, every railroad tie a piece of instruction that as the train goes along, it reads every single tie, gets information off of it. If you were to go from one end to the other of this railroad track, if you were to travel 60 miles an hour nonstop, it would take you 5.7 years to get from one end to the other of that string of DNA, going 60 miles an hour. Just to read all those ties, and you'd have to read the ties as you went going 60 miles an hour. How many of you could read information on ties at 60 miles an hour? That should tell you a little bit of something. And to make it even more interesting, more visual, how far can you go 60 miles an hour in 5.7 years? That's to the moon and back 6 times you would be traveling. So that string of DNA that you have inside you is like a railroad track. Just picture going up into the sky to the moon, turning around, coming back, going up, 6 times up and back in one string of DNA in every single cell of your body. Is that incredible? Is that complex? Science wants us to believe that it's all some kind of accident, that all these instructions got put in every single cell of your body. God laughs out loud at science with the stuff that they come up with. Don't have time to talk too much more about it, but here's what chromosomes look like. This is the first thing in the DNA that I want to talk about is the chromosome. we have what a chromosome is each one of these, this one here and then this one here, each one is a chromosome. They're bound together. In this picture, the two of them bind together, getting ready for the cell to split into two different ones. But most of the time, they're by themselves, just hanging out in the nucleus. But a single cell, a chromosome is just a single long DNA module wrapped tightly around what they call histone proteins. Uh, I don't know if you can see it in this picture really, but you can see the helix here is totally out of proportion. But there's histone molecules that this twisty thing binds to and folds up, and that's how that 6 feet long can cram into a single cell. But anyway, that's what a chromosome is your DNA all wrapped up, neatly knit together, by the way, with histone proteins, and that allows it to be folded up and neatly packed together. That's what is in every single cell of your body. And in every single cell, there's 23 pairs of those chromosomes, and each one of the chromosomes has a string of DNA in it. And in total, obviously 23 pairs means there's 46 actual chromosomes. Each one has a portion of that 6 feet of DNA. And each one is dedicated to taking care of a different function or a different part of our body. In each pair, you have one chromosome that you got from your mother and one chromosome that you got from your father. Your mother's DNA, your father's DNA together, and they share information in a process that's so complex there's no way I could even understand it, let alone be able to explain it. But each chromosome has anywhere from 50 million to 250 million base pairs. So just one chromosome might have up to 250 million base pairs, just to give the instructions for that chromosome. And all together, it looks kind of like this. We've seen it before. Here's the cell. Here's the nucleus with 23 pairs in there, and the 23 pairs of chromosomes have the DNA spun around inside each of the chromosomes, and that DNA contains all the instructions for our life. It contains the blueprint. And I'm not going to talk about all these, but just to give you an idea, there's 26 chromosomes or 23 chromosomes, like I said, and we give them each a number, and medical science has been able to map out our DNA. They know that what they call chromosome 1 has to do with brain development and metabolism. Number 2 is sensory function and immunity. 3, vision, cell signaling. Number 4 deals with skeletal development, your bones. Number 5, your lung development and your immune system. Number 6 deals with your major immune genes. Then there's growth and hearing, early development, blood type, cell growth, insulin production, and the list continues. There's 23 in total. I didn't want to put them all in, but you get the idea. Every single aspect of our life is the information is there in one or the other of these chromosomes. And in each of these chromosomes, like I said, there's the chain of DNA. Well, you've all heard of genes, obviously. Well, genes are only a tiny part of the string of DNA, as this illustration shows that one section of your DNA ladder, so to speak, one section is called a gene. There's only certain sections that are called genes, but what a gene is a specific segment of DNA that contains the instructions for who you are. Your genes are what tells you who you are, how you're made, what you're like, and all that. All the rest, well, let me just put this here. Your genes determine all of your traits and your physical makeup, everything about you. That's what your genes do. And in each gene, there's 20 to 22,000 or pardon me, there's 20 to 22,000 genes in one DNA molecule. So just in one string, one of those strings that's in each of your cells, there's 20, somewhere between 20 and 22,000 genes in each one. And on average, each of those gene segments, this is just one of them that only has about eight, uh, 8 pairs. No gene has only that many, but on average, each one of those sections of genetic material, each one of them, parts of the ladder, averages between 10 and 20,000 base pairs just in one gene that tells something about your construction, who you are. And like I said, there's 22,000 genes. It's absolutely amazing. But here's something else. Genes are only 1 to 2% of your entire genetic molecule. That string, that's ladder-like string, only 1 to 2% of it is your makeup. All the rest of it is instructions on how to do a lot of other stuff, which I won't even try to take the time to talk about. But that means it's only 1.5 inches out of 6 feet. Just that little bit is all every information about who you are and how you're made is just in 1.5 inches of that 6-foot strand. To put it in the train example, 2% is still about 60,000 miles in train illustration. So all that railroad track, all those railroad ties, 60,000 miles of it is who you are and your makeup. That's so incredible. It's crazy, but there's still 98 to 99%. But that 98 to 99% is far from useless. What it does is it's the control system, the architecture, the timing, the switches, the insulation, the history of your genome. All that's contained in the other parts of your DNA. So you've got it all there in a big string. What are you going to do with it? Well, there's a process called transcription. I'm sorry, but this lesson's going to go a little bit long. It's called transcription, and that part is the process of reading the DNA. I already talked about the alphabet, those 4 letters all arranged in different ways, telling something. Those instructions are in the DNA, but you gotta read it and then perform the instructions, follow the blueprint. That's called transcription. And what happens in transcription is there's an enzyme that goes through the DNA and unzips it. As you can see, this little loop, this little bubble is unzipped. That's the weak hydrogen bond. That's why it's weak, is so it can be split apart. And just temporarily, it's split apart. And while it's split apart, a thing called DNA polymerase, which we talked about last week, that goes along, following along as the information is being unzipped. It follows along and reads it. And then once it reads it, along behind, the DNA zips back up again. And then when it gets all the information it needs, it disconnects, and then the rest of it zips back together so the DNA doesn't get torn apart. Well, that happens to all of your genetic material, to all of your DNA chain, but in particular, something happens when your DNA is read when it's part of your gene, one of your gene things. And what happens there is the unzipping takes place, but the RNA polymerase, it creates a chain of amino acids and sends it out there. And once it gets done reading that section, it closes, and that chain is then taken outside the cell or outside the nucleus. And we talked about last week now I've forgotten, ribosomes. The ribosomes change those amino acids into proteins. I'm not going to talk about all that stuff. You know how complicated that was from last week. But that's how it happens. The DNA is unzipped, read, and then zipped back together. And then something is done with all those instructions. Obviously, it's a complicated process of how stuff is done. No time to tell about all that. But The other 98% are used for creating RNAs that are the machinery and the managers of the cell. They control when things turn on. They do many more housekeeping tasks. And that is the transcription process where the DNA is read. Then there's another process called replication, and that's where things are copied. This is when things are prepared for cell division. How you grow is by your cells dividing and become more and more and more. Things grow, cells die, they have to get replaced. So the other cells divide and replace the dying cells. And in replication, I just have to go through this really quick because our time is really up. But there's the unzipping that happens. Then proteins stabilize the two strands so they don't fall back together. All of these different states. I'm not even going to talk about it. You can see how complicated all that stuff is. And even at that, it's way oversimplified. Just as much as if I drew this picture and said, that's Sue. That would be a little bit of oversimplification, right? Well, that's how oversimplified what I've just told you about DNA is. It's way oversimplified what I just said. Your DNA is incredibly complex, but what it does is it has design written all over it. You can't accidentally have that. This whole thing was written out, a book, a huge library of information that just come out by accident out in the desert and somebody picked it up and built a human being. No, that does not happen. People are ridiculous for thinking that. But God is behind this incredible creation, and he even created a language for your life, and that language is DNA. DNA is an incredible thing. In Psalm 139, we'll read it. He says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." We are knit together. DNA is an incredible thing, and there's no two DNA alike. You are unique. There's no one else like you, and there's no one else ever will be like you. God created you with a purpose, and he created you for a purpose. You are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that was not an accident. That's God doing something, and he did it for something. There's a reason for you being here. Our job is to find out why we're here. The primary reason we're here is to fear God and keep his commandments. This is the whole of man. But you may have you're unique. There's something that you can do that nobody else can. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure I even know mine. But there's things that you can do that nobody else ever could or can now. Something that you can accomplish. I don't know. But it wouldn't be a bad idea to spend time in your life searching that out, figuring out, why am I here? What am I doing here? God made me in an incredible way. Let me listen to him and get knowledge from him. That's what we need to do. If you're here today and you can appreciate that God made you for a reason, then you need to be looking and finding out. We need to make the most out of ourselves. And the best thing that you can do for yourself is to live a godly Christian life. That's the best thing you can do. In Proverbs, we're looking at that kind of thing. Finding wisdom and discretion. That's how you live a long life. That's the best thing you can do for your life. Follow in Jesus' footsteps. When you do that, you're leading a godly and perfect life. That's what we all need to do. And whatever it takes, whatever we need to do. So determine for yourself, I really am important. God made me like nobody else. I want to be doing what God wants me to do. He loves me that much. I want to love him back. That's what we should be doing. We're going to sing this song by way of invitation. Obviously, our God, he is alive. How great he is. just let this lesson penetrate your heart and just appreciate God. Give him glory for what he made out of you. Let's stand and sing this invitation song.